This year's theme is accelerating action. I think we need to look at that very seriously with what's going on in the world, and also a backdrop of actually how far have we really progressed in recent years in building a gender equality. And do we keep following the same old DEI strategies, or do we need to look for something new and do something new? This is a heavily nuanced subject. We should be looking at gender more on a spectrum, because putting people in boxes just creates and reinforces stereotypes. And I meet a lot of men who don't comply with those male stereotypes, and a lot of women who don't comply with those female stereotypes. So it's not helpful. I'd also like today, we are men for inclusion. And inclusion is all about culture, behaviours, values. It's the way that people act and behave. So often, and I think where we may have gone wrong in the past with our DEI strategies, is the focus has been on policy and procedure. Let's try and keep away from policy and procedure today and focus on values and behaviours. I think we would all agree that women have freed themselves, by and large, from complying with these outdated female stereotypes. We see women at the top of our industry running FTSE 100 companies, going into space, inventing vaccines that save us from COVID, flying aeroplanes, top sportswomen. But also, we have the choice. You have the choice to be working mothers, or indeed stay-at-home mothers, and everything is acceptable. You've created a world of opportunity and choice that my mother, 60, 70 years ago, just didn't have. Are we still largely complying with those outdated male stereotypes? How do we accelerate action? How do we accelerate progress here? And I'm looking at a very simplified illustration of actually what maybe we have done over the last 10 years in businesses to bring about gender equality or diversity and inclusion. They recognised, one, they needed more diversity in the room, but diversity wasn't just what they needed more inclusion. But then, I talk to a lot and work with a lot of firms in the financial services space, and I ask them the same question. And quite often you get, oh, it's the right thing to do. Yeah? Or the regulator are telling us to do it, or government are telling us to do it, or we want to look more like our customers, despite the fact that we do everything online these days. And they're kind of those less believable, less compelling business cases. You look at what those organisations are doing, and they're doing something different. But whatever, they then say, okay, what we need to do is we need data. And so I'm going to say this in very sort of crude terms. We need data, so let's go and count the women. Yeah, see how many women we've actually got in this organisation and where they are. And they see the data and they say, oh, okay, well, what we need now to do is we need to recruit more women because we haven't got enough. So they change the way they recruit. And then they say, oh, well, actually, we've got these women coming into the business, but we need to do things to attract them or make their lives more comfortable when they're here. So we need some different HR policies. We need to think about maternity leave, menopause. We need to think about our sexual harassment policies. And so a whole range of HR policy gets written into stone. And the next thing that happens is they suddenly see, actually, these women have started to talk about the fact that I'm not getting heard in meetings, or the stat that you gave around not applying for a job unless you can do 90% of it. And so we need to train you. Yeah? We need to train you to succeed in my world. Yeah? We need to talk about imposter syndrome and leave all these things. We need to... we need you to behave like me if we're not careful. And it's very crude, but I think that's largely kind of what's happening in a lot of organizations. But we can't bring diverse talent to the table unless the menu changes. So, we won't have be given the opportunity to contribute unless we can be ourselves. But I would say as well, we've spent all of our time counting and fixing the women, but along the way we've ignored the men. This whole journey has created some gender conflict, and it has created resistors, and clearly we have a chief resistor in North America, but other people like Andrew Tate, that we worry about our younger generation looking up to, but also quiet resistors, the quiet people in our offices who actually, down the pub, in small circles, are resisting because they don't see anything in it for them. And that's why we're called Men for Inclusion for a reason, because I think when we start talking about inclusion, we start talking about behaviours and values and culture, etc. We start talking about it as an all, as a benefit to everybody. Yeah? It doesn't put us in those boxes, and we can move forward with that. I'm going to run through the first two elements of a deuce with you. The first one is awareness, and this is where we're starting to really talk about the lived experience gap. Yeah. The difference between the female lived experience in the workplace and the male lived experience in the workplace, and the sort of things that we need to watch out for and look out for. The second element that we're going to talk about is the desire, which is, and I apologise for this, but it is going back and talking about and thinking about how do we engage that part of the population who haven't been engaged in this subject and make them passionate about it. We're not going to progress unless we all progress together. Yeah? We can't progress unless everybody is in the room. And I think we need to be and ensure we get everybody in the room, knowing what they want, what they've got to do and how they do it. So, moving on then to that awareness. One of our co-founders, Dr. Jill Armstrong, completed 5 years research at Cambridge University. Jill identified this thing that she then described as the lived experience gap. And the female lived experience in the workplace is generally, and all of our research with our clients since then has shown that your lived experience is likely to be 15 to 30% poorer than mine. Yeah? Now, we talk about gender pay gaps and other things, but we very rarely talk about the lived experience gap. And I think one of the most important things we can do is close the lived experience gap. The lived experience gap is caused by what Jill describes as accidental sexisms or accidental isms. And she identified 16 things that are more likely to happen to you in the workplace than me. And all of our research shows that there's kind of between a 15 and a 30%, or Jill's research and ours since, there's always this between 15 and 30% gap in this lived experience. But I use the words more likely because if you struggle to get your voice heard in group situations, 31% of women say that rarely happens to them. So it's not happening to all women. And 62% of men say it rarely happens to them, but it is happening to roughly 38, nearly 40% of men. So actually, if we can change things, If we can become more inclusive, then actually it benefits everybody. So where are people on their journey? And certainly, all the research is showing that an increasing number of people, both men and women, are resisting DE&I initiatives. Yeah. Some IPOS Royal College research a year ago, 64%, I think it's 64% of men in the UK think that gender equality has gone too far and is now directly affecting them negatively. But something like, and I haven't quite got the figures and can't remember, about 30% of women thought that as well. Yeah? So clearly, whatever we've been doing, there is a growing resistance to DE&I initiatives that we can't ignore. But I think when we come on and talk about solutions, we need to look at what we see, and somebody used the word ally there, and I think we need to be really careful of that word, because quite often when I ask men who describe themselves as good allies, actually what is it they're doing? And when I talk to DEI officers and heads of women's ERGs is what they want from an ally, more often than not, it's about helping, the answers I get are about helping and supporting women to succeed and flourish in the current culture with the current behaviours. The call here was to accelerate action. And I think, diversity has got us this far. But I think inclusion needs to be the focus going forward. Because inclusion embraces everybody, it embraces us all. I think if we change the narrative, change the way we speak, we're going to get us all in the room. Because increasing representation diversity is in the hands of a very few people, those people who recruit and promote. Whereas inclusion is all of our responsibility. It benefits us all. It gives us the way forward. Thank you.